Grey's Anatomy Season 19 Episode 2. The episode begins with Meredith, the new chief. Or, at the very least, she was acting as one while the other chief was away. Bailey had resigned for who knows how long. She chose to spend the last 6 months with her family instead of dealing with hospital politics. However, Meredith was left in charge. She has the authority to make hiring decisions, and she did so. She brought on a new residency director. Nick, her ex-boyfriend, was hired. When he returned to Minnesota, she missed him. She was too proud to call him and ask him to return. I'm just not that proud to not hire him. Meredith's decision to hire Nick was one of many. She even returned Teddy and Owen. Owen was arrested for providing prescription medications to soldiers who wanted to end their lives. He refused to give medication to a soldier's husband. Because the husband refused to provide information about his wife or have her come in to meet Owen, Owen was hesitant to administer the medications. However, that individual reported him to the authorities. Owen found himself in serious legal trouble. He went on the run with his family for a while, and it wasn't until a lawyer got him probation that he was able to return to work, though not as head of trauma. Owen was not permitted to treat patients unless another attendee was present. Teddy was appointed head of trauma. Owen's wife's name was Teddy. She also blew up her career to flee with him, so the fact that she never assisted anyone's suicide saved her. Teddy, on the other hand, did not regain her previous position. Instead, she was given Owen's old job. She was the head of trauma, and she butted heads with Owen on a regular basis. They were constantly fighting. Their squabbling was driving their intern insane. Nika was a brand new intern. It was her second shift, and she wanted to make a good impression. But it was difficult to speak up with Teddy constantly sniping at Owen. And Owen is having a hissy fit because he is now being watched over everything he does. But she wasn't the intern who discovered a medical mystery. Jules and Simone were both treating 2 college students who had come in with food poisoning when one of them started having shortness of breath. It would eventually turn into splotchy skin. The man then began to bleed from his IV puncture. The child was now in grave danger of death, but no one knew who it was. They also had no idea what had caused it. What was causing both young men to vomit for 6 hours if it wasn't food poisoning? They informed Meredith about it. Meredith summoned Richard and Teddy. They couldn't figure it out, so they passed it on to the interns. They told them to figure it out because Jules' name would be on the death certificate. As they tried to figure out what was wrong with Jules' patient, he deteriorated. His leg became gangrenous and had to be amputated. Link delegated the task of cutting it to Jules. He was the guy who rebuilt people's legs. Interns could be tasked with removing them. Link and Jules accompanied their patient into the operating room. As a courtesy, Link left a note on the leg instructing Jules on where to cut, but she accused him of flirting and he had to apologize. It's especially strange because they once hooked up. He thought he had to report it to HR because they were hooked up. Only he told Jules about it, and she didn't believe they needed to report anything because they weren't dating. They spent the night together. That was it. Jules thought he was desperate to define the relationship, and she told him she didn't appear that way. It did, however, make things awkward between them. Simone came running in while they were still in surgery, with that awkwardness still present. Simone identified the problem with the patient. She informed them of it. It also explained why the blood was not clotting because the patient started to bleed. The Link was able to resolve the issue in the OR. He helped save the patient's life, and the child was also treated for his disease. He apparently had a complaint that he would not have had if he had been vaccinated. Mika's case went from bad to worse. Her patient had stuffed his wife's phone up his buttocks. They had to dig it out while Owen and Teddy were still arguing. Mika despised everything about it. The patient then had a heart attack. Mika was able to bag him, and as a result, she did learn something in the end. It also boosted Owen's motivation to teach something. Owen realized he couldn't work with his wife watching him. He approached Nick. He offered to teach for the remainder of his probation, and Nick agreed to accept. Nick also reconciled with Meredith. They even had a date. They went to her daughter's school event, where Zola was supposed to give a presentation on Alzheimer's. Instead, Zola bursted crying on stage. Zola assumed her mother and siblings would find out and she would be alone. As a result, Meredith had to rush up on stage to comfort her, and the interns now believe Lucas is having an affair with his aunt. They have no idea Amelia is his aunt. They had just seen them exit a room alone together and assumed they were sleeping together. Lucas ignored it because he didn't want them to know that both of his aunts work at the hospital. And the episode ends.